There is no ground underneath it. There is an airport suspended above it. Saudi Arabia simply decided to ignore gravity. Every cable here has to hold weight, and most structures never even come close to. A runway with absolutely nothing solid underneath it. So how do you actually build an airport that never touches the ground? Let us find out. Before it can hold an airport in mid-air, this cable starts as nothing more than individual strands of steel. Every cable that will hold this airport up first has to survive the same desert road as everything else. This cable has to be strong enough to hold up something most engineers would never even attempt to suspend. Before a single cable is approved, it has to prove it can hold far more than it will ever actually need to. Alongside the steel, a completely different material takes shape, light enough to suspend, strong enough to land a plane on. Every section has to survive the exact kind of weight a landing aircraft will eventually place on it. Each spool here will eventually hold up an entire section of runway, suspended in open air.
Before anything is suspended, they have to know exactly what kind of ground will need to anchor it all down.
Every panel here is treated less like construction material and more like precision aerospace equipment.
Through open desert, the pieces of an airport that will never touch the ground make their way toward the place that will suspend it.
The material has arrived. Now it has to become something that has never been attempted at this scale before. Before anything is lifted into the sky, they already know exactly where every single anchor point needs to sit. Everything above this pit depends entirely on what gets built inside it first.
This foundation has to anchor cables that will eventually hold an entire airport off the ground.
Thousands of tons of concrete, poured purely to hold down something that is about to defy gravity above it. The first tower that will help hold an airport in the sky begins standing up itself. Every bolt here has to hold up more than steel. It has to hold up an idea most engineers said could not work. One tower alone was never going to be enough, and this design needed several, working together.
Every tower now stands exactly as tall as the math required. Not a meter more, not a meter less.
From up here, the actual cables that will suspend the airport begin their journey across open air. The very first thread connecting two towers that used to have nothing between them but open sky. One strand becomes dozens. Dozens become a single cable strong enough to hold real weight.
Before anything else is suspended from it, this cable has to prove it can carry weight, and it has not even met yet.
For the first time, you can see the actual shape of what is about to hold an airport off the ground. Now, the actual surface that will one day hold a runway begins its own journey into the sky. The very first piece of solid ground this airport will ever have, and it is hanging in midair.
And it holds exactly where the engineers said it would.
Section by section, a solid surface begins forming where there used to be nothing but open sky. For the first time, you can see exactly what this impossible surface is going to look like. Every seam here has to move slightly with the wind, without ever actually coming apart.
At this height, with nothing solid underneath it, wind is not a maybe, it is a constant.
Hundreds of sensors like this one will constantly monitor exactly how much tension every single cable is carrying.
This is the widest, heaviest part of the entire structure, and it is floating almost entirely on cable tension.
On top of an impossible platform, an entirely ordinary runway surface quietly takes shape.
Even the markings here have to be visible from a plane approaching, something most pilots have never had to land on before.
Even the terminal itself has to be built light enough not to compromise everything holding it up.
Every single addition up here gets weighed against exactly how much the cables below can actually hold.
Even unfinished, it already looks like nothing else, floating above any desert, anywhere. Every inch of this impossible structure still passes through very ordinary human hands.
Working this high, with nothing solid below, means safety here is never treated as optional.
Halfway complete, and it has not dropped a single centimeter more than the engineers predicted. This is exactly the kind of moment the entire design was built to survive. When conditions clear, the work continues exactly where it left off.
Even the tower meant to watch over every landing has to be light enough to belong up here.
Every wire here has to travel through a structure that moves, very slightly, with every gust of wind. Now, the entire structure can constantly monitor its own tension, cable by cable, at all times. After all of this, only one final section remains before the runway is complete. The very last piece of a runway that, until now, has always had a gap in it.
And with that, the runway is finally.
From up here, it is almost impossible to believe there is nothing solid holding any of this up, but tension and math.
Every panel must be finished perfectly, whether it is the first one suspended or the very last. Now this entire structure can be monitored, cable by cable, panel by panel, from a single room.
Soon this will not just be the airport with no ground beneath it. It will be visible glowing above the desert every single night.
After all of this, tensile cables, carbon fiber, and constant balance testing, it stands complete.
Even now, the smallest detail is never rushed. One by one, the machines that built the impossible now leave it behind. The ground below falls quiet. Everything that matters now happens far above it. Even up here, the same colors, the same care, the same attention to detail. Even reaching the terminal means riding something engineered specifically for this exact structure. Getting people safely down from a structure like this needed an entirely new kind of emergency plan.
This equipment tracks the one force this entire structure has to negotiate with, constantly.
It's a clear boundary at the base, around the towers, holding an entire airport above it. Even the towers holding everything up get finished with the same care as the runway floating above them. The small plate, marking the exact point engineers once said could not hold what it is holding right now. Chingus. After all of this, reversed expectations, hidden tension calculations, and a single suspended surface.
Before it is ever declared finished and the entire structure is checked, cable by cable, one final time.
Looks good.
For the first time, someone is officially watching this entire balance, every second, from a single room.
And somewhere inside its own tension is still being measured. Every single moment. Every light, checked and working
exactly as designed. Every utility here has to travel up through towers built purely to hold weight, not carry cargo.
One last look at something they spent years building before it belongs to someone else entirely. Everything is ready. Everything except the first plane.
Every calculation, every cable, every panel, approved, one final time.
The very first aircraft begins its approach toward a runway that is not attached to the ground at all.
And just like that, a plane lands on a runway suspended entirely in midair, exactly as designed. The entire structure absorbs the weight of a landing aircraft and barely shifts at all. No fireworks, no big celebration, just quiet relief that it actually worked. The very first passengers step out onto ground that technically is not ground at all. Most of them will never fly from up there. All of them will still want to see it for themselves.
Within weeks, what once seemed impossible becomes just another flight schedule.
One structure, no ground required, and an airport that proved gravity was always more of a suggestion than a rule. Every sunrise now reaches this structure minutes before it reaches the desert floor beneath it. This is not just cable and carbon fiber. And this is what happens when engineers stop assuming an airport needs ground at all. No ground beneath it. An airport above it. Gravity, quietly ignored.
This video is created for education and information purposes using advanced AI tools and human creativity. All concepts, scripting, and storytelling are independently developed to ensure originality. Visuals and animations are generated or enhanced using AI technologies such as VO3, Meta AI, and Grok AI, while final editing and post-production and completed using CapCut and other professional editing tools. No external created content has been copied or reused. Any semblance to real-world environments, factories, or processes is purely coincidental. All scenes shown in this video are digitally created and do not represent real footage. This content is produced with transparency and follows YouTube monetization guidelines.